just wanted to give an overview on the Global LHON Community. And basically the overarching theme, I would say, is leaders needed. Anyone who wants to become a leader in the community, we need help, we need support, because we're all volunteering to help each other out, and as we can see, we're a developing force, and anyone that wants to get involved, please do. The community is growing. We have a global Facebook group. I hope you're all members now, if you weren't, or will be by the end of the day if you weren't before. Back in 2014, we had about 1,600 members. We now have 2,800 members. There's an email list, and if you're not on that list yet, let me know, I can add you, but we're up to 1,200 folks. And as we talked earlier in the day, the conference has grown from our first with about 50 people, then we went to 80, 110 last year, over 100 this year. And a lot of things have been added to the community over time because people have an interest. Maria, could you talk a little bit about the monthly conference call?
Yes. Is this on?
It will be on when yes.
Hello? Oh, there we go. Yes, 2 years ago at the second conference, we got to talking after the conference was over for maybe another way that we could connect people within the community. Because we had such a great time at that conference, we wanted to keep it going. So we came up with an idea, of course with Lissa's help, to start a monthly conference call. And between myself, Jessica Loomer, and Andy Marks, who are not here, we co-host a monthly call the first Wednesday of every month, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I've said that like 1,000 times. We started it, and so it's almost 2 years now, and we have guest speakers. We talk about different things going on in the community. Someone maybe wants to share a story, ask advice. It's your call, and that's what the tagline is. It's called LHON Live, It's Your Call. And I typically do a wrap-up post. We always post a recording link so that anyone can listen to the call if you miss it. And, definitely go back. You can go back and listen to the ones that we started with way back 2 years ago. So I advise you to try and get on some of these calls. You don't have to say a word. You can just listen, or you can speak up and say anything you want. We don't go into medical, supplements, religion, politics, it's hot topics now. We don't go into any of that. It's simply just connecting on the phone with others in the community who may not have anyone around them or near them, and this is one way to get them connected.
Thanks. And I think it's been great. I know some of you have been a part of the process where as people come into the community, it's great to know there's a conference a year down the road or 11 months down the road or whenever it is you come in on the cycle, but not everyone can get to the conference, and not everyone wants, you don't want to wait that long until you can join the community. So it's nice that, every month there's a call coming up. And we evolve the call, it's flexible. We develop things as we go. So for instance, we've started adding a new feature at the end of the call. We turn off the recording so that, if you want to talk about stuff and not be recorded, you can do that too. And as I think Maria pointed out, if you have any topics that you think would be worth talking about, there's lhonlive@gmail.com, and you can reach out and propose topics and develop the monthly call that way too. One of the things that's happened this year is a couple folks have come up with special interest topics. And we've executed on those special interests in a couple of different ways. One is with calls, and someone has said, well, there's something that we should have a special call about specifically, or let's have a Facebook group about that. So it's just a matter of identifying that that's what you want, and then figuring out how to execute on that. So LHON Plus, for instance, Lisa, could you tell us about that?
Thanks, Lisa. 2 years ago, I presented at the symposium, and I was trying to bring attention to the LHON Plus part of LHON disease. And I was trying to bring this awareness because I was diagnosed with it, and I didn't present with classic symptoms. And I thought that maybe there was other people that potentially might be being overlooked. In the course of 2 years of me starting to form a global LHON plus group, we now have several hundred people that have joined this group, which really helps. Some of the families that had originally come to this room as LHON families with symptoms that were MS-like, and they had never known anything other than LHON disease. In the last 2 years, they have gone and seen neuro-ophthalmologists, and they've also gone and consulted with mitochondrial disease specialists, and they were investigated to see if they in fact had the plus form of LHON, and additional genetic testing was done on them. And usually it's mitochondrial exome sequencing that's done, so it's a little bit further testing, and in doing so, some of them were actually diagnosed with the LHON plus. So by doing that, that was able to help them solve the years of searching and trying to figure out why they were having multiple symptoms. And the multiple symptoms that can come from LHON plus is quite different than just the vision loss. Symptoms that people in our group discuss are things like neurological problems. We have symptoms like headaches, migraines, MS symptoms, seizures, vertigo, myoclonus, tremor, and chronic peripheral neuropathy. And as we're developing this group, it's been really helpful to learn from each other, because there isn't a lot of science. There's some science, but we're helping to nudge it along. And so we're really learning from each other. And I think that's where these focus groups, I think, are actually helping each other more than we realize, because we're able to go back to our doctors and say to our doctor, you know what, like, there's 12 other people last night that are saying, you know what, I have really bad headaches that we can't do anything about to solve these. Maybe this is something that we need to think about, whether this is part of my disease rather than it's just headaches. So it gives you opportunities to be able to have discussions back home. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So Lisa and I set up an LHON plus Facebook group a couple of years ago, and as people come into that large global group, it's got 2,800 people in it, and so when you want to have a conversation about LHON plus, you get lost in the crowd. So we created a separate group so that when every time people say, I have these additional symptoms, we encourage them to join the plus group. And so the conversation happens over there. And then one day she said, I've been talking to these people, and I think it's time for a phone call.
Yeah. And so then we had the phone call, and the phone call was great. It was really good for people to be able to connect with each other. And I think going forward, it'll be really good. What I'm hoping that we can do is I'd like to be able to find some different people that can do a little bit of education on the phone call as well, because I really find with the LHON plus group, because they're dealing with the vision loss, but they're also dealing with sometimes your mobility impairments, like you're in a wheelchair, or if you've got seizures, sometimes you're homebound and things like that. So there's a few more things that they're having to deal with that if we can, I'll be working on a little bit more education material and things like that. But if anybody has any more ideas to bring towards the LHON plus, I'd really be open to them.
And then going from the other direction, I got contacted by Jennifer Malika saying, golly, we've got this issue around high school, and how do you deal with the issues around high school? And she said, we need to have a phone call.
So I contacted Lissa because when you have a child that's in high school that's affected, all of a sudden you're thrown into special ed, IEPs, 504 plans. And I kind of went, whoa, what's going on? I wanted Michael to have the best education possible, but yet I wasn't quite sure if I was doing the right things as a parent. You're kind of thrown into a room with 8 school staff members and yourself and your child, and you're taking what the teachers and what the school staff is saying is in the best needs of your child, and I wanted to make sure that we were headed in the right direction. After conference last year, I was speaking to another mother who said she was struggling with their school. I thought that Michael's schooling was going well, so we got talking, and I called Lissa and I said, you know what, I'd like to hear what other families are going through and bring open what their IEPs look like and see what other parents are experiencing. And so Lissa set up a call. It was a phenomenal call. We got to understand what other families are going through, and the best thing I think that happened with the call is the kids were on. And the kids got to tell us their experiences with the school and what they were thinking. So from that standpoint, I think it was great. The education site, I know, hasn't gotten a whole lot of use, but I'm hoping parents, if you have more questions, let's get another call together and work on it, because it's hard. I know I spoke with Chris's dad last night, and he talked about the ACT test or the SAT test, and that might be something, you know, that we need to look into as far as what we need to do, making sure these kids have the right accommodations made at the right time. So.
And that's why we kind of went in the opposite direction, where Jennifer said, okay, we need to do this call, so we did. And then I thought, well, after that, what do we do? So we created the site for it, the Facebook group for it, and that's where we put a link to the recording of the call, and invited all those same people to join that group. So when needed, you can get all that information there. And again, it's the same concept of whenever there's a subgroup of this group that can get lost. So Maria, there's an LHON affected women group, where, if you want to just speak to that briefly, because again, women often get.
There's also a LHON affected women's group. Like she said, it is private, and it's just for women who are affected. So we can go on there and talk about anything we want, being a mom, a sister, a daughter, or whatever. But it's strictly for women, and any of the issues that come along with being a woman, a mother, like I said, mother, daughter, sister, all of that can be discussed on that Facebook page as well.
So anything like that, if you can dream up a need, talk to me. We can create it. There's people that are probably having the same issues. So calls are possible, groups are possible. Another thing that happened is LHON report. Maria, can you tell us about that?
Yes, I can. A couple of months ago, it seems like a few months, I was approached by Lissa, who said, hey, I got this guy in Chicago and he's thinking about doing a podcast. And I had mentioned to her a long time ago, I was thinking about doing a podcast. So she connected us. His name is Brian Boros, and he started this podcast by simply interviewing a few folks in the community. Lissa was one, myself, and a few other affected folks in the community, just single interviews. And then Brian and I started talking. He said, hey, would you want to be a co-host? I'm like, yeah, I would. So anyway, we became a co-host about 3 episodes ago. And what we do is we get on there and we have blind talk. We bring up news and views of what's going on in the community, but also not just the community, but also in the an overall blind community. Maybe some things that are coming out with technology or the newest, latest, and greatest. But then we also have interviews that we bring into the podcast as well. Most recent one we did, we called it International Leadership. And we had interviews with a gentleman from Germany. We had Paolo from Italy, and we also had a gentleman from Spain. And they were able to talk about what's going on in their neck of the woods, in their LHON communities. So it was a really great podcast. But then you'll have one where it's just Brian and I talking about just things that happen, just crazy stories and what's going on. And we seem to have a pretty good rapport. If you listen to it, you'll figure that out. You can find LHON Report on iTunes under the podcast. You just search LHON Report, it'll pop up. You can also go to LHONreport.com, where you can also listen to the podcast. Okay, and we are always looking for folks who might want to do a little 10-minute interview or things like that. You can always just send me a message on Facebook, or just get a hold of me somehow, and I'm happy to get you hooked up and connected for a future podcast.
Thank you. And local networking remains a great way for people to experience what you're experiencing here, sort of the opportunity of connecting with other folks going through the same thing. And again, we do this conference every year, but it's a long distance to travel, and it's only every year. When things are done locally, you have the opportunity to just create a reason to get together. So for instance, the California International Marathon takes place every year in Sacramento. And this past year, Jessica Loomer and Matt Oliver, we had a good group of folks participating. Chaz Davis, sorry, we had 3 folks participating in the marathon. So my husband and I were up there, and we just made it an LHON get-together. So that was, that can be done, right? Whenever there's a place where you're going to have a group of folks with LHON together, you just make it a get-together. There's also the opportunity, the UMDF has regional events, and Jennifer took part with one of those.
Last year after the conference, I think I'd been home maybe a month, and I get this message from Lissa saying, I got an idea for you. The UMDF is having their Energy for Life walk next week in Minnesota. Want to get a group together? Thanks, Lissa. How can you say no? So I said, well, okay. Do you have names? Little did I know that in my own state, 20 miles away, there were 2 people affected with LHON. So I contacted them via email, and we put together, as you can see in our picture, for those of you that can see it, there were 8 or 10 of us that walked for the Energy for Life. We had 1 week, and we raised $1,000 for that walk. So that was within that 1 week. So.
And in the packet that you received when you registered, you got a list of all of the UMDF's Energy for Life walkathons. And, the funding goes to the overall UMDF fundraising. It doesn't go specifically to LHON, but, the research that funds anything to do with mitochondrial diseases ultimately impacts LHON. So it's all for a good cause, and it's also an opportunity to do like she did, where you don't know who's going to show up. And if you try and set up an event and nobody shows up, that's no fun. But here's somebody else, they're having the event, it's taking place, you invite people, and if you're the only one there, okay, you're the only one, you hang out with the UMDF crowd, and or you get 1 person or 2 or 3, and it builds, and you build your LHON community within the larger mitochondrial community, and they're doing the setup so you don't have to. So that's an opportunity to take advantage of if you're interested.
Lissa, one more thing on that. We are in Minnesota doing the walk again this year. I've headed it up, or I'm heading it up, I should say. In Minnesota, they want to have theme songs for each team. I don't have any songs. So if anybody from the LHON community has relied on a song, private message me, because we need songs for the Team LHON. So if you have a song that really hits to heart and you want us to use it, great, I'm looking forward for it. And then also this year, to raise money, I've got a company called Great River Traders that's donating t-shirts. So for every person that wants a t-shirt, I believe it might have the LHON logo, be neon orange or fluorescent orange, whatever. And it say Team LHON, they're $20, you get a t-shirt. So, and that, like Lissa said, the money's going to the UMDF.
And using that Team LHON moniker is a way that we can sort of, instead of making it, Jennifer's Fund or whatever, like some folks do, but by making it Team LHON, no matter where it takes place, we'll know what we've done, and at the end of the day, we'll know as a group. So that's a moniker we're using.
I think LHON theme song is Elton John's "Blinded by the Light."
Thank you.
It's my theme song.
Good to know. Regional Facebook groups have been developing over the past year. After the last conference, we were sort of, again, talking about groups within the group, subgroups. And so we now have a New England group that was set up by Cindy Tylek, who was at the last conference. Susie set up one in Florida. I set up a California one, Southwest, Pacific Northwest. So, we have regional Facebook groups, and hopefully anyone that wants to set one up in a particular region that isn't yet represented, I know I've got connection information with a variety of folks sort of wherever you want to do that. So, work with me if you want to set up a group. I can help drive people to your region because, again, on the one hand, it helps to be connected to the global group because that's where a lot of the general information gets posted. But on the other hand, having something more local, more regional also helps because people want to know who lives nearby. And so having regional Facebook groups as well as the larger group, I kind of liken it to having, right, you have your, in the olden days when people had newspapers, right, you had the national news and the local news, you sort of need the two sections. So you need both, or it helps when there's both. I just wanted to touch on the fact that the global LHON community is really growing. There are Facebook groups and meetings taking place all around the world for LHON, and that was not happening when we first got involved in LHON. On the screen, there's logos from some of the countries where there are groups and meetings taking place. We've got Denmark, we've got France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and the UK. All of those locations have a Facebook group and have had a meeting similar to this. And hopefully, we have, there's a Facebook group for Australia and New Zealand, and hopefully some of the folks here from Australia who've been conversing with the UMDF equivalent over in Australia might be, working towards developing the community there. Canada, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the conversations or just know that. There you go.
We're certainly working on developing Canada. So if you're from Canada, please give us your name so we can start to collect more of a database and grow the community there.
And one thing that I think I mentioned this morning, Dr. Karanja, who spoke a couple of times this morning, it's unfortunate for those of us in Southern California that he's relocating up to Canada. On the other hand, it's great that he's relocating to Canada because that'll, give a scientific point of contact up there. There's Facebook groups in Argentina, Portugal, Scotland, and actually I met some folks 2 days ago. I guess there's a group in Japan that I'm trying to get connected with. So lots going on all around the world. There's also a new group that you may not know about called, there's a group in Europe, Eurordis, and it's like a rare disease group. And they have something called Rare Connect. And they have a new global LHON community. And it's intended to sort of solve the problem of communicating across languages. So you can post and it'll automatically work its way between English and French, German, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. So you can look at the Rare Connect site. We haven't driven folks to it yet, but there's sort of a desire to see that grow. One area I want to talk on a little bit is fundraising. Certainly the research is growing in the world of LHON, and one of the things that can help research move faster is when there's fundraising done. Jennifer, can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Sure. So being the control freak mom that I am, Michael came down with this lovely disease and I wanted to control it, and I can't. So one way that I decided that I could try to help, because he's got a rare mutation, and for him to get any help, everybody else has to be cured. So I decided I'm going to throw a fundraiser. Last year's conference, Jessica Loomer said that she did a dinner in the dark. I thought I can do that. So I called my brother and I said, I've got a great idea. Let's do a dinner in the dark. We'll make a couple $1,000s. I think it'll be great. So I got my brother on board and we decided to do dinner in the dark, and our goal was $3,000. And pretty soon I started selling tickets for this dinner. They were $50 tickets, $25 went for the meal, $25 went to LHON Project Fund, and people kept buying tickets and kept buying tickets. And we gave the ballroom a total of 280 people, and the night before we sold another 50, 75 tickets. So we ended up having 312 people. We had a live auction, a silent auction, and we grossed a little over $40,000 that night. The net that went to LHON Project Fund was around $33,000. So that was our night. Michael, like he said, talked in front of 312 people. It was amazing on how the community came together to support the LHON Project Fund.
Any interest in doing things in the future?
You know, I don't know if we can hit our same community up next year and have it a repeat thing. So, of course, since I met these two people from 20 miles away, I said next year it's in Burnsville. So I'm hoping that we can get something going together in the other community to see if we can keep it going.
And my hope is if anyone else is thinking of doing a fundraiser, one of the hardest things is like, yeah, but where do I start and what do I do and how do I get there from here? And it's got to be really hard and there must be stuff I don't know. And maybe that's all true, but a year ago, what did you know?
I knew nothing. And I called Jessica, and Jessica gave me her ideas, and we just expanded from that. And then, so once again, Lissa calls and says, hey, will you be my go-to person for fundraising? Yeah. And Jeremy, can you say no to Lissa? Yeah, I couldn't either. So I'm more than happy to help anybody who wants to do some sort of fundraiser. And I do have a long, just as I was kind of prepared, samples of the tickets that we sold, the flyers, the program that we used. So if anybody wants to look at, you know, like the silent auction items, the live auction items, and that I do have ideas that are here.
Thank you. Great job. And Jeremy, a little bit about fundraising?
Yeah, well, after I lost my sight, my roommate in college, he was like, hey man, so this thing doesn't have a treatment or cure, like let's raise money for it. I'm like, dude, you're smart, yeah, let's do that. He said, you know, I've always wanted to do some type of a fundraising walk, why don't we do that? And I'm like, well, you know, I'm blind, I can walk, we can do that, okay, cool. He said, you know, I've never been to Seattle, I've never seen the Space Needle before. What if we do a walk from San Diego to the Space Needle in Seattle? I'm checking it out on the internet, find out it's 1,200 miles. I'm like, dude, I love your enthusiasm. We're not walking that far, no. It's not happening, but let's come up with different ideas. Another cool thing that Maria's gotten into, and I learned about at that time, was tandem cycling. For those who are blind or visually impaired, can ride on the back of a tandem and participate in bike rides that way, be a co-captain on a tandem, ride with someone else, have a good time. And I came back to my buddy, I said, hey, I learned about tandem cycling, let's do a fundraising bike ride. It's like, great idea, let's go San Diego to Seattle. Again, no, we're not going that far, man. Like, let's change it up a bit. So we kept talking about it, and we ended up creating our own fundraising bike ride from Santa Barbara, California to San Diego. That's 240 miles, and we do that in 4 days. And we started in our first year, the summer between my sophomore and junior year of college, right after I lost my sight. We had 4 riders and raised just over $3,000. And we're like, okay, that was cool. Let's build on that. And it's grown in size every year. We've done it every summer since. And in the 7 years of the Cure Ride, we've helped raise over $175,000 for the LHON project. And that's, yeah, thank you. That's all sparked from my buddy saying, hey, let's do this walk to Seattle. So I tell you that to say, you know, we're not trying to grow the ride by any means. It's like 20 to 25 of my closest college fraternity brothers and friends doing it every summer. And I tell you that because if we were able to start that, anyone, the Molokas doing what they did, anyone can start any type of fundraiser with their friends back in their hometowns. The Kayla Nuis and Scarlett is a virtual writer pretty much every summer for us. So she creates a fundraising page under our platform and is able to just send it out to friends. And if you're interested in doing that for us, that's extremely helpful to raise awareness and funds for LHON. But we have the fundraising platform to be able to help you create your own fundraiser at your own hometown, whatever you want to do. So get started. All you need is the first step. And feel free to contact myself, my mom, any of us, to find out how to use that fundraising platform.
And then can you talk a little bit about how you've expanded to like keychains? There's a picture on the board of that.
Well, the keychain on the board, that's my girlfriend, Ellen, who's extremely helpful. She helped us come up with a tagline for what we kind of live by now. It's 4 words: focus on the good. As an inspirational speaker, that's what I try to like spread to the fully sighted community and others out there, that we need to focus more on the good rather than dwell on the negative. I focus more on this peripheral vision I do have rather than dwell on the central I don't have. And so I sell these keychains, focus on the good, on my website. And for the sighted community, I say, hey, it's on a keychain. So if you're complaining about things, you feel it, say focus on the good. And at the end of the day, you can drive. So, hey, let's put things in perspective here. So that's a little thing we try to remember every day.
He sells those and gives a percentage to the cause, which is all to the good. I wanted to mention that we will be doing this again next year. So if you had a lot of fun here, hopefully you'll consider joining us again next year. Next year's conference will be on Friday, June 30th in Alexandria, Virginia. We will again be doing a day on the Hill on the preceding day, Thursday, June 29th, and we'll have a meet and greet like we did this year. And I would like to just say, hey, if you're interested in becoming an LHON leader, as we were just describing, there's just so many ways you can be helpful, whether it's in the support, education, community building role, whether you want to develop a local group, want to propose and help conduct a special interest call or group, if you want to offer to assist, new to community members, help with the conference, help with communications, or whether, science and advocacy, if that's your thing. There's issues around fundraising or connecting with the researchers, the clinicians, companies working on treatments. If you can identify a need and support a solution, speak up, because it's taken that step, and helping us all move forward is valuable. As Carol said, the genealogy talk earlier today was designed to encourage everyone to think about whether they wanted to take steps to find and alert and educate their maternal relatives. And I think, as you heard from those panels today, it may be a difficult piece of information to share, but hey, there's nothing to fear, right? You can turn out and things work out great. And so it's you can share with them the video of these great people you've heard from today, and it's not as scary as it once was. It's a positive story. Again, all ideas are welcome. You can make a difference to the community, and please feel free to contact me if you have any ways to support and help.